I met this guy at work. He was married. He messaged me saying that he was getting divorced and that he liked me. 2 weeks later, he moved in. A year later, he and I got into an argument. He stood up and said, "I'm going." There's no way that I can feel like this and not be dying.
What are the stories about what would happen if you let yourself feel more?
If I let myself feel, then I will fall apart. I just find it so hard to be vulnerable.
Alongside that broken heart, you've been carrying a lot of guilt that's not yours to carry.
It feels like I've got a different face for all of these scenarios. I've always sort of made myself feel uncomfortable rather than make a man feel uncomfortable.
What do you need to say to him now?
Oh, God. He sent me some messages. If somebody likes me, then it's like, okay, great.
You're just not worthy.
I don't know what to say.
The vast majority of the suffering that we have in life is not the feelings, it's all the things that we do to not feel the feelings.
Hi, I'm Alex Howard, a therapist with over 20 years experience working with clients. Welcome to In Therapy, a series where each season we follow one person on their therapeutic journey with me. Every episode dives into a different theme with added explanations to help make the insights more relatable and practical. This season, we're tackling struggles many of us deal with. Things like toxic self-talk, body dysmorphia, low self-esteem, feeling unlovable or broken, and dealing with relationship and childhood trauma. My hope is that by following along, you'll pick up tools and understanding that can help you transform your own life. New episodes come out weekly, so don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date. This season's client truly dedicated herself to the process. I couldn't be more proud of what she's achieved. I particularly appreciate the courage it took for her to open up and be vulnerable with me, her male therapist, about her relationships and experiences with men. I feel honoured to have been part of her journey, and I believe her story will resonate deeply with you as well.
My name is Belle. I am 27 years old and I'm a graphic designer. Some of the thoughts that I have about myself are definitely very critical around my appearance, especially. I definitely give myself a very hard time about being perfect. With regards to dating, I think I have a very difficult time with rejection. I think if I get rejected, then I just straight away think like, oh, okay, I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, and I find that very triggering. Through this process, I would love to learn a bit more about why my brain behaves the way that it does and why my inner voice is very harsh. I'd just love to learn more about how to forgive myself for being the way that I am so that I can be kinder to myself going forward.
You guys ready?
We are ready to go. So.
Okay.
Do people cry?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
That's why there's a box of tissues there.
Okay, nice.
Firstly, welcome. Thank you for being here. I think my starting point is when we're sat here together in 8 sessions time, what do you hope you would be reporting has changed? So you would be saying, this is different, that's different. Like, what's your hope for being here?
I think my hope is that I will be in a better place with myself. I will be more confident and have a bit more sense of my own identity, which is, something I feel like I've lost a bit along the way. So that's the goal. I think I want to really feel like I know myself better and have more confidence, just feel better in myself, from within.
Yeah. It sounds like your relationship with yourself, like how you are with yourself day to day, is not yet where you'd like it to be. Where is it at the moment? Like, can you give me some examples of the way that you are in yourself and with yourself that are not ideal?
I just think that I'm really hard on myself, and my inner voice is so critical and loud.
Yeah.
So it feels like even if on the surface I'm coming across very confidently, or even if I'm doing something really well or whatever's going on at the time, in my own head it's never enough. I'm very it's tough up there.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to get out.
Yeah. It sounds like there's also a gap between how you believe you have to present yourself to the world and how you experience yourself on the inside. One of the ways that I talk about that is it's the idealized self, like the version that we think we should be, or the person that we think we need to be to feel loved by others, to feel safe, emotionally safe around people. Who is that? What is that idealized self? Like, what's the story of who you think you should be in the world?
Who I think I should be is often the entertainer, like always cracking jokes, even at my own expense. But like, that's definitely a part of my persona, is being the extrovert, the life of the party, and playing that role, which is that's how I see myself, and that's often how I get approval from people, because it feels like that's often, why people like spending time with me. I think there's a feeling of like, oh, I'm hyper independent. I can do, I don't mind not being in a relationship. I'm fine on my own. I'm, I've got so much going on. It's all great. It's all perfect. That's how I feel I should be. That's what I try and project. And like you said, there's such a gap between how I actually feel and that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I hear that. And it's not to say that there aren't times that is how you feel, right? Times where you're with friends and you're laughing and you're having fun and you're like, it's not that is necessarily not authentic, but it sounds like it's part of your experience. But there's a bunch of other parts which are being rejected or disowned or not allowed to be expressed, right? And one of the challenges is when people relate to us through that sort of idealized version of ourself, we don't then feel the real connection, because they're connecting to us at the surface, but in our hearts, and the actual real need we have for connection, for friendship, for intimacy doesn't really get met because they're relating to what we're putting out there.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. And, then I think the next issue from that is that often I don't know how to be myself. Like, I actually don't know. I don't know how to be authentic with people because I'm always performing. And to the extent that even if I'm on my own, I'm performative to some extent. Like I don't know deeply who I am. And so I don't know how to be myself. So being myself looks different with different groups of friends, with different people. And yeah, like you say, it's just that kind of, would they still love spending time with me if I was being totally myself? But I don't know how to be.
Well, it sounds like and we can get more into the history around this, but it sounds like one of the things that you've learned is to feel loved or to feel safe or to feel connected to other people. You almost need to figure out who you need to be for them and then become that. Right? And
Absolutely.
and I imagine you've got really good at doing that. But in a way, each time you do that, there is a subtle and sometimes blatant rejection of yourself. Because what you're really saying is, I'm not enough. I need to be this person instead.
Yeah. I've been doing that for so long that I can't get back to myself anymore. Like, it's just, I don't know, maybe there was a time when I was myself and then I would, pick up on what someone wanted me to be and do that for a bit. But now that's all the time.
Yeah.
And I've become so good at picking up on who someone wants me to be, like the tiniest cues of what they might want.
Yeah.
And I can just like slip into it and I'm not aware of it.
Belle's talking about something that so many of us deal with, that struggle between being who we really are and who we think we should be. A lot of the time we try so hard to live up to expectations, whether they're ours or other people's, that we end up losing touch with our true selves, sometimes without even realizing it. As you follow Belle's story, consider, are you being real with yourself, whether you're around others or on your own? If not, who are you trying to be? Are you shutting down your own feelings to fit into that role? And what impact might that be having on you?
So there's the idealized self that you're trying to be for other people.
Mm-hmm.
But to do that, there's a rejection of how you actually feel. Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of feelings and emotions and things that are going on that are not being particularly allowed by you, but they're also therefore not being held and supported by others. So I'm interested in those feelings. Like when you have a bit more space to feel what's there.
I think that is part of why I don't really go there. I don't really let myself feel my deep feelings a lot of the time, because when I'm in a place where, I'm pushed to the point where it all comes up, it's like a deep self-loathing, because it's a deep self-loathing that is just, I almost can't find the root of it. I don't know where that comes from, but it's very much there. And it's a self-loathing because I think you're not being yourself. You're not, it's like, I almost cringe. It's like, you're doing everything to be who everybody wants you to be, and it's still not enough. And that makes me feel really angry, ashamed. Yeah, just like a really deep like hatred for myself. It's a horrible thing to feel, but that's what comes up when I notice that like gulf. And if I really sink into how I feel about myself, that's what comes up.
So I want to make a separation between that critical, judgmental voice, which has been called different things over the years in psychological literature. Freud talked about it as being the superego, the original German was the Über-Ich, which is the over-I, like a version of ourselves that constantly sits in judgment of us. And it does that for a few reasons. It does that because when we're very small children, when our caregivers aren't around, we can feel unsafe. We don't know how to be in the world. So we internalize their voices to give us a sense of familiarity, but also to sort of teach us how to be with other people to get our needs met. And as children and as adults as well, we have a few core basic needs, like the need to feel safe, the need to feel love, the need to feel our sense of our own inner strength and our ability to say no or to say yes. And when those needs are not met in the optimum way in childhood, which tells us really almost nothing about whether our parents loved us or cared about us, because they can love us and care about us, but just not be skillful at being able to meet those needs for us. But when those needs are not met in the ways that we need them to be, and those needs are not nice to have, they're like as important as food or oxygen or water is for our physical body, for our emotional body, then this inner critic really develops to tell us who we need to be to try to get those needs met. So we take, for example, the need for love, the need to feel loved for who we are as we are. And when that need is not met, again, it doesn't mean our parents didn't love us, it just means the need wasn't met in the way we needed it to be. Then our inner critic starts to tell us who we need to be. And so maybe we learn that if I perform a bit better, or I try a bit harder, or if I ignore my needs and I take care of this person, then I start to get what I need. And that inner critic gets stronger and stronger, and we get more and more normalized that we don't even see it as an inner critic. That's just how we are and how the world is.
Yeah.
So I just want to separate a little bit, and we can talk much more about this, but I just want to separate your inner critic's narrative about you from how you really feel about you. Because you've got so normalized by the sounds of it. I mean, I'm only getting to know you a little bit here, so I'm not too many assumptions here. But my sense is that you've got so normalized to that critical voice that's just become statements of truth, as opposed to some stuff that you've learnt and you've practiced for a few decades now that has become almost the same as being true, but it doesn't actually mean that it is true.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, all of that really hits, because I think my inner critic is so present that it doesn't even feel like it just, it comes up if I make a mistake or say something I shouldn't have. It's all the time.
Yeah.
So, and very much even when I'm on my own, it's like the version of me that's living my life and walking down the street and going to work, and then the version of me that's watching me do all of those things, and it's judging, good, bad. It's analysing everything all the time.
Yeah.
And that voice is saying, it's almost like looking for evidence to prove that I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of love. I will never be loved. And there is something wrong with me.
That's the story.
That's the story. Like, those are the thoughts. And it's, I don't even know where it comes from, but that's the story.
Sometimes our inner critic has a grain of truth, doesn't hear want to be clear. But sometimes our inner critic has a grain of truth. And then it takes the grain of truth and it creates a mountain of misery. So sometimes, for example, we're in an interaction with somebody and we're tired, blood sugar's low, we're a bit ratty, and we say something that's a bit chippier than we mean it to. Mm-hmm. Right? We've all done it. Mm-hmm. And then we come away from it and there's a grain of truth. Like, we didn't actually express in that moment the genuine kindness we do feel towards that person.
Yeah.
And then our inner critic doesn't leave us alone for days afterwards. Mm. And it turns it into, you are the most unkind, selfish, awful person. I'm amazed that you've got any friends. If they really knew what you were like, no one, like, it becomes like this enormous barrage of attack. Mm. But there's like a minor moment where we just weren't as skillful as we could have been.
Yeah.
So part of the thing that the inner critic hides behind is sometimes it's got like this little bit of truth that it turns into this enormous weaponization of that. Mm. We take your scenario, and we can get into it in a little bit, some of the relationship history. Clearly there are some things to work on. That's why you're here. Mm-hmm. So you're not in denial about the fact that there are some things to be changed. Yeah. What's really ironic is the biggest piece so far that we're seeing is the inner critic. So the inner critic's telling you that you are broken, useless, unfixable, unhelpable. But the thing that's the problem is it.
Yeah.
Right? So just like to expose that
yes.
for a minute. Right? You're not the problem, it's the problem. Now, you've got so normalized and so familiarized to your inner critic having the narrative that it has, that it's become your narrative. It's also worth saying that the inner critic is very skillful at hiding in plain sight. So there's three primary ways that we experience it. One is the very classic in our heads towards ourselves. So you're in a situation, take my example, you say something that's a bit unskillful and then you're attacking yourself. Mm-hmm. But also we can find ourselves attacking other people. And so we become judgmental and critical of others, which is often a way of trying to, if we feel not enough, it's a way of trying to inflate ourselves and trying to put them down so we can lift ourselves up. But the other thing it does, which often people don't spot, which is also very sneaky, is we project it onto other people. So we're in a conversation with three people, and our inner critic is telling us all the horrible things they're thinking about us. And it's not, I wonder if they might be thinking that. It's just a statement of fact that they're all, so, if we go in, for example, and we've had our hair cut in a way we don't like it, our inner critic is telling us all the things that they hate. They probably haven't even noticed.
Yeah.
Right? So it will hide and it will present itself in lots of places that are confirming this central narrative. For example, in your case, that you're not worthy, you don't deserve love, there's something that's broken and wrong with you. And it's reinforcing it everywhere. But just because that's what it's doing, it doesn't make that story actually true.
If you'd like to learn more about how to explore the themes in this episode in your own life, do check out my most recent book, It's Not Your Fault: Why Childhood Trauma Shapes You and How to Break Free. In that book, I give you a framework to understand the impacts of childhood trauma on your life now, but also a practical roadmap to support your healing.
One of the things that helps us get some distance and get some space from the inner critic is to see how much of a constant contradiction it is. Like, if you're going to take abuse from someone, let's at least let them be accurate and consistent. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Your inner critic will judge you for not speaking out, and then it will judge you for speaking out. Mm-hmm. And then it will judge you for being too empathic towards someone, and then it will judge you for not giving someone time. Mm-hmm. And then it will judge you for working too hard and not taking enough time off, and then it will judge you for it just constantly, everywhere it goes, it's in contradiction of itself. And as you start to see more of that, what often will happen is it doesn't get you necessarily completely free from it in that moment, but it's like, well, hang on a second. Like, can you at least be clear and consistent? Like, what are the rules?
Yeah.
Because right now the rules are set up in a way that you've got absolutely no chance of winning.
I know. Yeah, it's like lose all the time.
Right.
All the time. Yeah, it's tough, and it feels like I will always let myself down before I will let anybody else down. So it's like the inner voice is very much, it gets worse and worse because I'm letting myself down quite a lot, just to try and fulfill somebody else's needs or what they want from me, which I guess goes back to what you were saying about learning just to try and, please everybody, to chase that feeling of being safe and loved. That, it's like, the inner voice just gets worse and worse because, again, contradictory. It's telling me to please everybody else and to morph into all these different people to try and be loved. And then at the same time, it's like you're pathetic. You're letting yourself down all the time. You don't even know who you are. So it's just so self-fulfilling. Right.
Yeah, one of the things when people start to learn a little bit, I'm noting you've got some good self-awareness, right? You've obviously thought about some of these pieces.
Too much.
Well, it's also helpful to have some awareness that we can slow down some of that thinking, but it's being able to recognize that, in a way, whatever you do, it doesn't really work. But you're constantly depleting and draining yourself in that, which then reinforces the narrative that you're not enough, you don't have what it takes. So it really creates this cycle of being a self-fulfilling prophecy. But also, what strikes me as well is how much strength there is in there. Because there's the very fact that you put up with this for so bloody long.
It doesn't feel strong. It doesn't feel strong. It just feels like it's wearing me down. And it doesn't feel like I can pull myself out. It feels to me like the opposite of being strong. But when you put it like that, it's tough.
Yeah. I really hear that what you feel is the hurt and the suffering and the pain that goes with it. But I'm also glad that part of you hears what I'm saying, that you've kept going and kept putting a smile on things and kept doing the best that you can, despite the fact that it really hurts. We all have this critical voice inside of our minds that is constantly judging us, criticizing us, telling us we're not deserving, we're not worthy, we're not good enough. Sometimes we've told ourselves these stories literally for decades. But just because we've kept on telling ourselves the story, it doesn't make it true. A key part of effective therapeutic work is breaking out of the stories of the past and discovering who we are beyond those old stories. I'm really curious for you. What's the story that your inner critic keeps telling you? What have you come to believe about yourself that maybe isn't true? If you want to continue to follow Belle's story, do click the subscribe button. We're going to be releasing new episodes weekly. We're going to go deeper into this work, not just understanding that we have an inner critic, but how do we learn to get free from it?
I keep falling into these troughs mentally, but every time, you know, the next trough is deeper. I remember it was a Friday, I remember I was at school and thinking all day, you know, this is it.
You felt that low in yourself and you didn't feel that you could talk to the people around you about it.
Most of the issues I'm struggling with now, that's the event. There's no way that I can feel like this and not be dying.